Welcome to the Manhood Podcast. Provide and protector, procreator, promise keeper. You listen to this podcast. The father that you were supposed that he would get. Turn that off. Welcome to the Manhood Podcast. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about being a promise keeper and how important that is to your children. I've heard so many stories about fathers who've made promises to their children and did not keep them. Kirk Franklin tells a story, and I know people who have told a similar story to where they didn't live with their father. He was estranged, but he made arrangements to come pick them up and take them somewhere, to an amusement park, a baseball game, or just to pick them up and spend some time with them, period. And Kirk Franklin tells the story where he sat out on the curb, dressed with a suitcase, waiting for his father to show up. And he never showed up. He stayed out there until the sun went down. No father showed up. How disappointing that is, how crushing that is to the soul of a child, no matter what the age, you 5, 6, 7, 15, 16, 17, those things make a difference. Now at 5, 6, 7, you may not know how to process those things, but at 14, 15, 16, it's going to come out in anger. It's going to come out in some type of deviant or unwanted behavior in that child. But what makes that thing so important to that child? I was listening to a podcast the other day, and the podcaster was talking about, I believe it was a psychiatrist, psychologist, I can't remember which one it was saying how when you have inconsistent behavior, and this is in any relationship, could be in a parent-child relationship, could be in a romantic relationship, and someone breaks your heart, causes you trauma, causes you pain, it takes 2 years of consistent, unfailing, unfaltering keeping of those promises to them before they heal from that trauma. Now imagine 2 years, 24 months, okay, 2 times 365 days of making promises and keeping them in order to make up for that one promise that was broken. Now, there are fathers who break promises to their children every day, over and over and over and over again. So it doesn't have to be as big and traumatic as the one I described. It could be small things. You come home from work. Your child says to you, hey, Dad, play ball with me. Hey, Dad, have a tea party with me. Doesn't matter, male or female. And you say, okay, give me 10 minutes. Reasonable request. I just got home. I just want to relax for a minute, and then I'll play with you. Phone rings. You start talking on the phone. You get busy doing other things. An hour goes by. That child is sitting there waiting, throwing the ball up in the air, sitting at the table with all the silverware and everything else ready to go for a tea party, and you've got them on hold. And then finally, dinner time rolls around, and now you no longer have time, or it gets dark outside. You can't go out and throw the ball. But for some reason now you cannot do it. That's a broken promise. Broken promise to that child. And no matter how hard you work to make it up, the damage has already been done. I saw a meme online the other day. It said, if apologizing is not always enough, You can take a plate and break it, glue it all back together to the best you can. It's still never in the same state it was before it was broken the first time. Imagine breaking that plate over and over and over and over again. Those small cuts, I don't have time today. We'll do it tomorrow. I got something important to do. You're better off never making the promise than to make the promise and break it. Being a promise keeper is important to the self esteem, to the development of that child, to them having a self awareness of who they are and their own importance. You could tell them you love them and how special they are all you want to. But if what you're showing them is something completely different, that's the message they're going to get. More is caught than taught. You can teach them, you can tell them over and over and over again, I love you, I love you, I love you. It's just like us in relationships as adults. You could be in a romantic relationship, and if somebody is telling you they love you, but not showing you that they love you, you don't feel like you're loved. You could tell that child how important they are, but if something else always comes up that's more important than that child, they don't feel important. They have to take a priority. Now, none of us are perfect. None of us can say that we always keep our promises. I hate always and never anyway when you start talking about relationships and different things like that, because you can never always something and you almost never something. There are exceptions to every rule. But if you can make promises that you know you can keep, and then if you can't keep them, be accountable. Be accountable. Sometimes things come up and you just can't deliver. You can't make things happen. My daughters came to me probably a year or so ago, and they said to me, and you all know my story. I have four kids, two sons, two daughters. There's a 10-year gap between my youngest son, two boys are the oldest, and my oldest daughter. So it's like almost having like two different families, kind of raised almost two different ways. Boys is a whole different dichotomy and how you react and interact with them versus the girls. My late wife passed away when the girls were 9 and 11 years old, so they were very very young, and I raised them as a single father all of that time. So they came to me, the girls did, and they said, Dad, growing up, you never not delivered on a promise. Okay. And I just talked about never and always. I don't believe I never delivered on a promise, but that's what they remember in a loving, caring way. They can look back on their upbringing, even losing their mother, as traumatic as that was, and still find a silver lining in it. I said, Dad, you always delivered. You never said to us you were going to do something and you did not do it. And they said, even when you couldn't do it right then, you would say, well, wait until I get paid, or wait until this time of the month, wait until this time of the year. Funny story one time. And this is one where I did not deliver. It was a joke, and maybe a bad joke. They wanted a dog. They wanted a dog really, really badly, a little puppy and everything else. And it was probably at the end of the school year, May, June time frame, late May, early June. And I said to them, okay, we'll get a dog on September 31st. And these girls were excited. I can't remember how old they were. They were excited all summer long, thinking about getting this dog on September 31st. They go back to school September, and I don't think they ever looked at the calendar until we were in the middle of December, and they're like, "Wait a minute, there is no September 31st." And no, there's not a September 31st. That was me playing probably a harsh joke on them. So that was one time I didn't deliver, but they were saying that I always delivered. Even if I told them They would have to wait for another time to come along or a more opportune time to do whatever it was they wanted to do. Or I would tell them, listen, I don't have the means to make it. I don't have the means to do it. We can't do that right now. I don't see how we're going to be able to do it. I tried my best never to make promises that I could not keep with my children. I don't think I was perfect in that. I don't think that they remember it. So just the effort of trying to do it all the time or most of the time or being consistent with the things that was promised. I was one of the parents who I would rather pick my kids up from an event than have one of the other parents pick them up because I knew I was going to be there. Some of the other parents, not always there. I just knew that even when the parents were supposed to pick them up and take them, it might be a group of girls wanting to go somewhere, and one of the parents supposed to pick them all up and take them. That parent might end up defaulting at the last minute, and I would end up taking them and picking them up. So my kids knew that I would be there. My daughters especially. If they called me, if they were spending the night at somebody's house, which they did not do very often, but if they called me and said, "Dad, come pick me up," I wasn't on the phone asking them, "Well, why? What's the matter? What's going on?" I'd be like, "I'll be right there." No questions asked. If they didn't feel comfortable in a situation, get them out of there. There was consistency, there was stability. They knew that I was a promise keeper. And I told them if they ever called me and they needed to leave somewhere, I'm on my way. There's not any questions about it and anything else. If and they learn to trust their own instincts and everything else. And I say that to say this: when you are a promise keeper with your child, you are, and I'm gonna use a word that people usually use in a negative connotation, but it can be used in a good connotation. You're grooming them as to what to expect in their adult relationships with their friends, with their mates, with boyfriends or girlfriends they may have along the way. If they're used to inconsistency, they will accept that in a marriage relationship, in a dating relationship. And that's not a good thing. There should be commitments there. So you're grooming them for future disappointment, for future failure, maybe to even be taken advantage of in the future. You want to prepare your kids to go into this world and really be positive, make a positive contribution, and not to be taken advantage of. And you're setting them up to be taken advantage of because of a weakness. And if you go back, and I keep going back to um, Kirk Franklin and his story, and I talked about that in one of the earlier episodes. And if you get a chance to go on YouTube and listen to that video and watch that video on YouTube. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to my YouTube channel. I need more subscribers on my YouTube channel. I will not bombard you with, emails and notifications and everything else, but it's going to help me as I grow this podcast. So please subscribe if you can. But go watch that video with Kirk Franklin. And he says to this day, he's been in therapy, I think he said for almost 50 years. I don't remember the exact number. Sorry, 28 years. He's 53 years old, I think it is. For 28 years, he's been in therapy behind the things that happened between his mother and his father, and then his mother not being able to even admit that the man who passed the DNA test twice, his mother still says that's not her, that's not his daddy. Okay. And it causes him, this Grammy award winning, multi-million selling gospel artist, has insecurities. He needs the affirmation of a crowd to make him whole. And I'm not making up stuff. I'm not diagnosing him. This is what he says in the video if you've never watched it. Broken promises. Broken promises to him. And it's not just broken promises, there are other things that happened along the way, but those things have made him who he is today. Maybe not all of the success, but personally, not being able to be satisfied, to be happy, to be loving and caring to his own wife and children. And again, these are all things he talks about as a clear example. So keeping promises it becomes very important. Uh, Last thing I'll say about that, and this was a husband-wife relationship. It wasn't a big deal to the husband, or at least he didn't understand why it was a big deal to his wife. Wife came home. She came in. She had a very bad day at work. He didn't know she had a bad day. He's sitting on the couch playing video games. She says to him, "Listen, I want to go take a shower. I want to eat, and I like a Pepsi. Would you go to the store and get me a Pepsi so when I come out to eat, I have a Pepsi?" So my man's playing a video game and whatever, he got to the next level, to the next level, to the next level. And next thing you know, an hour had gone by. He had not gotten the Pepsi. His wife had already sat down and eat, and she is fuming. And she goes off on him. So my man gets up. He runs to the store. He comes back with a 12 pack, not just one soda, but 12. He think he's doing something now. Listen, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to do it. I brought you not just one, but 12 sodas. You think she was happy with that? Not at all. She was not happy with that at all. She was disappointed in him because he had not kept his promise. And when you add that on top of having a bad day, it becomes a huge deal, a really big deal to her, which now became a big deal to him and caused a rift in their relationship. Right? Same thing happens with your kids. They, as trivial as we may think, may have had a bad day. Talking to other kids at school, they cracked on them, told them, you ugly, your mama's this, your daddy's that, blah, 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 blah. Kids can be very cruel, especially to each other. And then they come home and they've been fighting somebody at school because they called you a deadbeat as a dad, and you promised to play ball with them, and you proven the kids at school right. And you just think they just want to throw the ball. It's just another day. You don't know that they've had a bad interaction. You don't know that as a teenager, they don't have the latest fashions. They don't have the latest clothes. And the other kids at school are talking about them. You doing the best you can. Or maybe you're not. But add that on top of, you just think it's that isolated incident when you're at home with your child. But your reflection, your imprint on that child is seen by other kids, and they will call it out very loudly, very quickly, and say some really cruel things that your kids have to go and deal with. So if you can be that promise keeper, they can defend you as opposed to having to take shots on your behalf. Listen, this is the Manhood Podcast. I thank you all for listening. I hope that you will become promise keepers. Listen, I've covered provider, protector, procreator, and promise keeper in this season 2 of the podcast. I have some good things coming up. I think I got one more episode in this season 2. Some great things coming up in the next season. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel, like and share the content that's on my IG page, Manhood Podcast. Also on Facebook, the Manhood Podcast. If you know a man who should be listening, please recommend it to them. I think there's some good information from this. I've gotten a lot of good feedback from people. I enjoy doing it, but I'd like to know that more and more people are listening to it. Listen, thank you all for listening. Again, like, share, subscribe to the Manhood Podcast. God bless you and thank you.